I need to go to the App Store and ask them a little bit more.
Do you need somebody to run your presentation for you?
She has a little,
What's that?
Oh, you don't, I was wondering if you have one of those.
They hooked me up.
from Bruce, of course.
Yes.
I don't
You
know.
know, you actually put it at this end.
Oh, that's
I've
funny.
noticed that all
It's good, April.
people
Sweet.
continuously
Like-
point at the
like-
screen even though the PC is behind them.
Yes. Now, the ones that really get me are when they start pointing up at the projector and get lucky.
And then they're like trained.
It worked
So
once.
before April starts, I'm just gonna tell everybody who's in here right now, after this session is over, it's the last session of the day, we have an unscheduled, just closing goodbye everybody and final prize drawing out in the big open area, just over here. So if you had a prize that you're hoping to win, be sure to be over there. It just wasn't on the schedule anywhere, so I felt like I had to make this announcement.
You're like, oh yeah, closing
If
the
you hadn't done it,
prizes.
I may not have a red shirt, but
Hey, you put it on your Twitter feed. If they don't see it,
I'm gonna try to say that again at the end for anybody who wants to ask this time. This one.
This one moment here. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and we'll leave that open for right now, but if it gets noisy.
the
Sweet.
little red one, I can handle showing Sue. Maybe dropped it.
Are you ready? Not yet? Hey, you in the back there.
We're listening.
No, anyways, alright, so I'm here today to, I really wanted to, I got the call to action as far as like, oh, submit to speak, and I was like, oh man, I've spoken so many times at TechPHX, I need to do this, so I wanted to talk to you. I love the TechPHX event because I don't usually talk about the cool stuff I get to talk about when I go to TechPHX events, because normally it's like, oh, WordCamp or SEO and like da-da-da-da-da, and for whatever reason, TechPHX is the conference where I like break out these conversations that I don't really have anywhere else. So I want to have a conversation about consumption versus creation, and when I'm talking about that, I'm not talking about just like online, I'm talking about like all of the media, all of the connections, the conversations, the things that we come in contact with, and how that kind of simmers around. So who I am, this is me. That's my avatar. It changes about once a year. Trying to get the photo taken. If you have any questions or you want to continue the conversation, please email me or on Twitter. But my real question is, who are you guys? So since there's so few of us, I just kind of wanted real quick to go through, the room and say, who are you? Why is this topic interesting to you? And how much time, in a percentage, on average, do you spend consuming content versus creating content? And I'm gonna write some stuff up on the board here. So my name's April Holle. Why does this topic interest me? Because I wanted to speak about it. And it interests me because for me, I love the idea of creating things. I feel like I'm a very creative person. I do a lot of craft stuff, but I also do a lot of like creating websites and graphics and stuff like that. I feel very creative. But I also know that the way that I create is through consumption, and the things that I consume changes the way I create. And so, I wanted to have a conversation with other people who are potential creators or might want to create someday, and talk to you guys about that relationship between consumption and creation. So I would say, on average, I probably spend 40% of my time consuming and probably 60% of my time creating. So go ahead. Eileen, you're next.
Well, I would say it's closer to 5 to 1 for me, probably consuming over creating, so I guess it would be 75-25.
75% consuming? Okay.
It's that HGTV addiction.
Right?
Yeah.
I just started watching The Walking Dead in the beginning of season 3, and I'm like, what's next? Anyways, Stephanie.
Oh, so you didn't make her do the rest of it.
Oh. Yeah, why is this topic interesting to you, Eileen?
Because you kind of think that, okay, if I'm only producing 25% of content I'm consuming 75% of content. Who are those people who are producing all that content? You know, they must be super beings who are just not so easily distracted by shiny stuff like I am.
Awesome, right?
So I'm Stephanie, and this is interesting to me because I'm a graphic designer and blogger, and so I do need to be consuming things, getting inspiration, seeing what the trends are, learning things. But, you know, I do worry, like, when is that line between, like, all right, you're just reading too much stuff on the internet and you need to, like, start writing, you know, or whatever it may be. And, like, but you do need those influences. And when I was spending a lot less time on that, you know, my work suffered. So I think I was really excited to see this topic because it is something interesting I've never heard to talk about. But I am like, I can't even like guess at this. I'm terrible with like numbers and percentage things, and it really depends on the day and what I'm doing.
Okay.
And I
So a
really
heavy
want to
day?
be helpful, but I can't really give you a ballpark. Sorry.
All right. Well, I would say because you're a graphic designer and because you do a fair amount of that as your business, I would probably say you're closer to like this mark, you know,
Let's just say
on
that.
the higher side. Right. So you're probably, let's just put you down as a 50-50.
That sounds excellent.
How about you, sir?
Me?
Yeah, we'll go around the back and we'll come back to the front.
I'm Nom, and it depends what you mean by creating. You know, like they say, when I'm building a link blog, is that creating or is that just consuming? You know,
When you're creating what?
a link blog or like clipping things, is that like creating or
You
not?
could totally get that into like the whole curation part of that, like, you know, that's kind of piece. But I think in the act of curation, you're actually creating something new.
Yeah, but it's
So-
still, it's at the same time you're consuming and you're creating,
Right.
so it's,
Yeah.
so it's kind of hard to.
Yeah, but you have to consume a lot more than you create usually.
Typically, yes, yes.
Yeah.
But then I'm also involved in some other things. I'd say 25, 75.
25 consuming?
75 consuming and
Yeah.
25 creating.
All right. How about you?
My name's Jim. I've been retired like forever, but I work with a lot of computer groups that are mostly older people, and they won't take the time to learn anything, so I kind of act as a filter for them. So I basically do what he's talking about. I read a lot of stuff, and then I put stuff out on Google Plus and feed it to Twitter, and also feed it to some people who go to their email accounts. So I'm probably 95% to 5% as far as consuming and creating. I read a lot of stuff, and then I filter it for stuff I think's interesting in my audience.
This is really strange because if you'd asked me this a year ago, the numbers would be totally different, but I'm about 99% consuming and about 1% creating these days because of...
1%. I mean,
Yeah, I am. I've always tended more towards the
You're sucking us all dry.
I've always
somebody's got to watch our fucking shit, okay?
I've always tended more towards the curation and using that because somebody once told me you can't write if you don't read. But at the same time, my creative energies go elsewhere than just content these days. And for those, because I forgot to say, my name is Kathy Jacobs. And why is this topic interesting to me? Because I want to get that creation number back up some, not to where it once was, but at least where I'm feeling like I have time to do something.
Right.
Target's 2.
And so when you say you're still doing some creation, like, are you considering like all the time that you spend like creating emails and you know the actual creation, even if it's only going to one person?
Well, see, that's an interesting question. Because what I do now is software testing and software training. But looking at that, if you consider that stuff, I probably then create closer to 50-50. Because I'm creating stuff for inside the company, not just for general.
But it doesn't matter.
Then yes, it's probably closer to 50-50.
All right. See, I just changed a 1%er.
Turned it all around.
To a 50-50.
I just used to think of it all as all the stuff that I was writing for everybody else. Now I'm writing for what...
Look how much more productive you just got.
Don't hate on yourself. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Scott.
Hi,
Easy. you know, once again, it probably goes into what you talk about as far as consuming versus creation. You know, I noticed that as I curate a lot of stuff as far as what I share, some of it is just, yeah, that's cool, pass it on, and some is, hey, wait a minute, I need to write a few paragraphs about this before I share it on, or say something that makes it a little bit more personal. So I mean, right now I'm busy trying to learn web development and all of that stuff, so I was about to say 95-5, but really it's probably like 75-25.
And why is this topic interesting?
This topic is interesting to me because of, you know, you talk about Pinterest, Tumblr, even Facebook with it, you know, as far as easy to share things. And, you know, really what, to me, I think about the rights of the person who actually made the initial post. And it's like, okay, how much credit do I get for that thought that
Thank
I
God
had?
for backlinks.
And how much of it is just, you know, 10 minutes later it's out there in the internet somewhere and nobody really knows who wrote it or why they wrote it.
My name's Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. I'm a web content manager, so if I had to like pick a percentage, it'd probably be 80-20 favoring creation. And the reason I say that is because I never get through the books that I want to read in the time I want to read them. I have yet to finish my podcast list within a week.
There's consumption in queue.
Yes, I never get anything done, you know, consumptively, if that's a word, that I want to get done because I'm too busy doing other crap. Part of my job is to create things for the library website, and that's from code on up to graphics and video. When I get home, I draw, I write, I illustrate, I compose music. I don't watch TV, so that helps too. So that's sort of why I can justify that. As to why the topic is interesting to me, because I am a digital creative. Everything I do sooner or later winds up online. Even if I like do something in pencil on paper, you know, dead trees and graphite, I still wind up scanning it and throwing it on my blog or something like that. So yeah.
Right. Awesome.
My name's Dan as well. Topic.
Dan and Dan.
Yes. It's interesting to me because I'm just recently getting back into being over, the 50-50 now. I'm like 60-40 with creation. I found that, when you do something, when I'm creating one thing, that one thing turns into 3 different things. Recently, like I'm just starting out getting into doing perler art and stuff like
That's
that.
fucking amazing.
It is.
I want to buy one of those, please.
I created these 2 last night. These are going to be Christmas tree ornaments and stuff. So I created this one last night and I put it on my webcam and I did a time-lapse video so you can watch it. It's all sped up, all of the placing of the beads and the ironing and stuff like that. Then that goes on YouTube and turns into a tutorial video,
Great.
which turns into a conversation, which goes on my blog, which people reference, and this one little thing that took a half hour turns into a couple hours worth of content that's out there doing things. Nintendo controllers, little tiny beer, Final Fantasy
What is your
characters.
site?
Was that? Oh, it's hardcoreperler.com.
Awesome.
Anybody else want to see something?
I got to see him earlier when
How
the kids
much are
were
you
going
selling
on
this for?
over.
Was that?
How much are you selling this for?
Right now, I'm not working on the sales angle of it because if you go on Etsy, there's like 7,000 different pieces.
Of
So
trophy cats?
$5.
Itself. That itself, if I was going to sell it, I mean, it would be hard for me in the competitive market to go more than like $5 on something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to turn it into an information product that people pay for the information on how to do it the right way because everybody's doing it wrong. because everybody's doing it based on the instructions they get with their little perler bead kits and everything like that, and they are all watching everybody else doing it wrong. And the tutorial videos are like, you know, made by 13-year-old girls
Yeah.
with their, you know.
You're definitely adding a demographic audience that I don't think is normal either for this particular.
So that's why it's for me now. Whenever I do something, I think, how can I utilize this from a blog and get creative, do everything like that. I tried when Ruby Cat was here. I tried my best to get in to get a picture of that with her, but didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
I didn't get my ticket
You can
this time. You had to
superimpose
get-
that. That's Photoshop, honey. So, how about you?
I'm Ray, and this topic's interesting to me because I didn't like any of the other topics going on at the moment.
Sweet. Default's fine.
Yeah.
That's
Process of
fine.
elimination.
Go ahead.
Consuming versus creating, probably 99.9% consuming and 0.1% creating.
Like that?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Awesome.
Miles, and interests me because I've always thought of classes of people as the creative class that is always creating and hardly ever consumes, and then the other class is the exact opposite, the cattle. And then I would say that I create maybe 20%, and that's mostly at work, for work things like technical writing kind of stuff. And the rest of it's all Netflix.
So you're also on the cow. You're like, I consume too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I was just really curious as to what everybody's numbers were, because I think there's a lot of diversity, and I think, you know, I have a hard time with the question of, well, what is consuming versus creation too, because, I mean, creation can be everything from I created a fall wreath to put on my front door to I overhauled a motor thanks to a YouTube video. So, you know, it could be all of those things. Point it back there. No, really. No, really. Oh, no, really. Uh-oh.
Space bar?
Yeah, just one over. There you go. So are consumption and creation connected, and or are they cyclic? You know, and that's, let me see if I, anyways, so this is kind of the cycle that I created. I'm just gonna totally be like, so I started thinking about this, and I think this might be the cycle. So go ahead and click again. So we start off with sharing, and I don't mean that like you sharing, but someone else sharing with you. You know, I feel like a lot of the consumption we come into is because other people have collected, propagated, created for us, and then have shared with us. So go ahead and video. Which leads to consumption because, you know, somebody reads, writes, watches your things at some point. So go ahead. And then from there, I think a lot of connection is made, you know, both in your own brain as far as, oh, this reminds me of this thing that may be completely unrelated or is just some part of your specific catalyst of experience. You know, like if you think about Steve Jobs and why Apple has the typography it has is because he dropped in after he was, you know, kind of thinking about dropping out of school to a typography class that, you know, he was doing drawings with, you know, typography, and so that's how that connection came to be. It makes a difference in all of our lives now with all the computer fonts that we have. So there's a connection there. And then that comes into the creation phase. You know, if you hadn't had that connecting experience, you couldn't have created this idea, and you know, that kind of thing. I think that you have to have, and like, you know, Stephanie mentioned, was that you have to have this amount of like content, almost like input, before you can have output or good output. Because, you know, you can input crap and output crap all day, but if you don't take some time to marinate, it kind of gets icky. So go ahead. And then once you're done with, you know, the actual creation of it, we always want to share it, right? We're always like, Mom, look what I made. Like, you know, at 6, we're like, this is awesome. So so that's kind of that cycle, right? And so I feel like it's very cyclic. Go ahead. And so that's kind of that thing. What, do you guys agree with this? Would you have additional ideas, connections, thoughts? So, you know, this is kind of the thing that I came into. If you want to go to the next slide. So I really want to ask you, like, how much content do you consume before you're inspired to act? You know, and sometimes, like, they like, marketing gurus love to tell you, like, there's 7 steps of engagement before they buy. Well, sometimes I just go on Amazon and buy the damn thing because that's what I wanted. That was your step, okay? Nobody, you know, I saw Cards Against Humanity at a WordCamp event. I went home, I got on cardsofhumanity.com, and I clicked buy. There were 2 steps of interaction with that event, you know. But, you know, how much content do you consume, how much content do you create, and, you know, how much do you consume before you're inspired to act? And so, you know, as far as, you know, when you're in that creation phase, right, what do you have stop points in your process of, like, okay, it's time to stop eating at the table and it's time to start making my own dinner?
Well, for me, it's not a case of how much content, but there's just, in good content, there's a point where you know that reading this piece or watching this video, you're going to share it, you're going to write about it, if it's good content.
Right.
If it's not good content, then for me, I'm never going to share it.
Right.
And good content doesn't mean well written or something. Something that makes me care, something that makes me do something. It can be just one sentence, one logo.
Right.
But if it's...
No, I completely agree with you. And the other question is, you know, I see in my process, like when I'm putting together a presentation like this, I'll go out and I'll research and I'll put in, you know, and I'll look through like the first 3 pages of Google and be like, what are other people saying about this? 1, because I don't want to look like a complete asshat, and 2, because things may have changed since I was gone last, or someone may have had an epiphany or a connection that I, you know, couldn't have had otherwise. So, you know, I feel like there's this point, though, that when I start going through again and again and again, and reading the same thing, but either the content's not on par, or they're saying everything, it kind of becomes this echo chamber type of feeling, where they're saying the same thing over and over again. I'm like, okay, I've consumed enough. At this point, it's time to create. So that's kind of the stopgap that I kind of like to put in there. Go ahead and click. You're so awesome at this thing.
I try.
You must work at a library.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm a computer geek.
You can't read this very well. It
You know, they have a conference for those things.
So I fucking love this. Oh shit. Do you think? Oh. I'm gonna die someday. It's gonna be sad. I love this. Social networks now following Blue Ghost, Square Ghost. I started like creating this, and I was like, oh, this is totally Pac-Man themed. So, anyways, do you think you consume more than you need to create, and if so, why? And I bring this up is because I think some of us, you know, we've got the 99.99% and the 0.01. You know, sure, we all need an audience, but at some point, it's got to come out somehow. You know, everything that you're collecting in your conscious, your subconscious, you know, whether that's even conversations, I think that it comes out somehow. So I would challenge you to say that you're a 0.01% creator.
He does have a private microblog.
See? Uh-oh.
But I only share it with
It is
myself.
private micro.
I only share it with
That's
myself
really
though, so
private.
no one else can see it.
I always share it with
No.
myself, just in case you forget, right?
Yeah,
It's your own
exactly.
social bookmarking
Note to
site,
self.
that's what's going on.
Yeah.
So go ahead next.
But,
Mr.
you
Lang.
know, a point there
Set.
on do you consume more, it's so easy to get lost on the internet and consume stuff that have nothing related to it.
Right,
Yeah, it's
like
right on
the
YouTube.
YouTube holes, right?
Well, there's always the I'm on the weird part of YouTube.
Right, you're like toe sucking, what is, oh wait, don't click that, like, you know, it's just, it's really not good for you.
But so I'll say that I don't understand, I'm married to one of those.
A YouTube hole, yeah.
A person
Toe
who
sucker?
a person who will sit there and read and read and read and watch videos and go down and down
Right.
and never share it. And I have never been able to get my head around that. if it's that good, don't you want to tell somebody else about it? And not just the person in the room with you?
So I would be questionable of whether that person's a connector or a maven, because they're two different, much different personality types. A maven just wants the information. They just want to know. You know, they need to know. It's not
That wouldn't be him at all.
right. No, never. You just, never.
That's the person, would that be him, Miles?
Sorry.
I guess or no would
totally,
be perfect.
yes.
Okay. When they're a maven type personality, they'll totally take in a bunch of content and never share, or very rarely share, or if you just happen to be passing by and you're convenient, they'll share. But if you know, and I love those people, especially in work environments, because then you guys go down the YouTube rabbit hole together. So watch this. So yeah, no, I have a significant other that does this, and that's actually why he inspired this. You can go back one slide. That's actually why he inspired this talk. Is because he literally will spend hours and hours and hours consuming content about wire wrapping and how to make jet propulsion engines and all this stuff.
And train crashes and car.
Right, and I'm like, okay, I'm glad you're interested in so many things, but how does this affect your actual physical environment? Like, if you just spent 6 hours doing something that didn't actually do anything, then it wasn't valuable. And I would say, yes, it is valuable, and that's where this next slide goes into play, because I think there's two very different reasons we have consumption. And I think we focus on the goal-oriented consumption, right? We're focused on, okay, I watched this video on wire wrapping so I could create this piece of jewelry or whatever. That's goal-oriented. There's a reason why you consume the content to do the other thing. And then there's this other thing, this consumption of content that I think gets a super bad rap. Like, you're like cows, right? You assume that this guy, just because he's a 0.01% creator, is that he's a herd mentality or sheeple or whatever you want to kind of label that. But I think that there's something about consuming for rest and play. And I think that kind of section goes along. So if you want to go ahead and click, we'll talk about goal-oriented. So when you're thinking, I love this, I was like, oh my God, it's Pac-Man touching God. Like, come on now. The reason, when it's goal-oriented stuff for me, I tend to ask the question, is this helping me get to the next step? Is this actually getting me to that next thing that I need to do? And I'll do this, and I did it last night when it was like 11 o'clock at night. I'm like putting together pictures for this presentation, and I'm like, whoa, okay, I am lost in this, like, there was this really cool table about how, tablets are now changing the way we consume and create, because you can't create as well as you can consume on a tablet, and everybody's getting a tablet. I was like, oh, that's such a cool thing, but does this help me finish this presentation? No, it's going to make it like 80 hours longer. It's just not a good thing. I have to leave this out. So that's the question that I use when I'm doing goal-oriented consumption, because I feel like I have to be, we're like, oh, push, pull, or, media and stuff like that. But really when you're when you're consuming things for a goal, if you do too much consumption, or you get stuck on Facebook or YouTube, you don't enjoy that positive experience afterwards, do you? You just feel shitty because you just wasted a whole day and you didn't get the thing done. So it's not necessarily positive, and so I try to stay away from that. Is there anything like go ahead.
But if anybody who's listened to self-help books or speakers knows this, but sometimes the most productive thing you can do is not being productive.
Right, which brings me to the next slide.
Sorry.
So the other question that I ask myself when I'm consuming a crap ton of content is this enjoyable rest and play? Because if it's enjoyable rest and play, it's actually very valuable, because connections happen when you're having fun and you're living life and you're resting. They do a lot of research on sleeping even. If you just spend 8 hours sleeping, I know this isn't content or consumption, but it's the connections that are made within that REM sleep that make your creation even better. I have actually experienced this, and this is kind of crazy, but I was working on a Red Bull Flu Talk campaign a long time ago when I worked for Terry Lever, and we had this problem that the flash was like completely like not like overlaying wrong, and so the drop down and like went under the flash thing. It was crazy. We were like, how are we gonna fix this? Because back then you couldn't Google that, or if you did Google that, you might find one answer. So it was nice. It's growing. But in any case, I just got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to bed. Like, I'm so done being bitched about this that I can't figure this out. I'm just gonna go to bed and rest on it. And actually, in the morning when I sat down at my desk the next day, I literally had the feeling of deja vu because I know that I had come up with the answer while I was sleeping. Right? Have you experienced this? No? You're like, no, my fucking neck hurts. Okay. But have you ever had that experience where like you go into sleep with a problem and you come out with a solution? And so I think that there's something about rest and relaxation and play. There's a great book called Play. Dr. Stewart, whatever his last name, Brown, I think.
Smalley.
Smalley?
Stuart Smalley. I'm good enough when I'm smart enough that
Right.
affirmation stuff.
No, it was just a really interesting book. So anyways, but connections happen when you're having fun, when you're in the flow. Like some of the greatest minds we know, if they're getting stuck with a problem, they actually go out and take a walk or something like that. And nature is actually one of those great things out there that there's just so much input everywhere that it just kind of sensory overloads you and allows you to kind of go back into what you were thinking about. Yeah. Any ideas, thoughts, feelings, reactions? This is crap, April. Why did you do this? Again. All right.
I
So
can tell you I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Sweet.
I
So
violently agree with you, I don't have anything else to say.
that's great. So next. The discussion's over.
Came out of nowhere.
That's what I wanted to talk about today, because I just really find the way we consume and create very fascinating, and how much of what, and I think, you talked about it earlier, Stephanie, of like, when you're getting ready to create something, you're like, how much is enough? Like, have I gotten enough, or should I have gone to that next result, because that next result was where the goal was. So there's a lot of questions about that. Yeah.
I meant to say, I always thought there were two classes of people, and then recently I thought about, oh well, maybe some people just are creative in different ways, or in smaller areas, like the person who they just go home and watch TV when they're done at work, and then but at work maybe they are
Like
working on something, and so maybe
creative.
there is a difference, and maybe it's a whole spectrum and whatever else.
Right.
And then I didn't mean to end that with, oh, you do it. So.
No, but I completely see where that kind of can get into play, is because when you're like consuming so much stuff, like you literally are like basically basing all of your personal habits and things and stuff like that on everything you consume. And so at some point, like I feel like humans are very creative little beings. Like that's one of the things we're really good at, is we're like, oh, we have a problem, let's solve it, or we have a situation, how do we fix this, and so I feel like creation is part of being human. And so I find it so fascinating and funny when people are like, oh well, I'm not of the creative class, or I'm not creative. I'm like, are you alive? Are you human? Like, did you make a breakfast this morning? Like, even if it wasn't very freaking unique, like, you still created something. Like,
No, I went to the Del Taco drive-thru and got a breakfast burrito.
and you
didn't
gave
create.
gave someone a job. No, yeah, that's a really good question. And
Or you
I'm like,
had to find a new way to pay rent because you just didn't have any money, so you had to get creative.
right?
Find out what in your house you could pawn or something.
So that bank robbery wasn't a felony, it was active creation.
Right, right.
Okay.
It was art, it was an art
Well,
project.
was anything actually created?
Terror.
Havoc?
Panic.
And good television. You know, back in the pre-internet days, we used to work with large corporations, and we found what were called information sinks. There were these middle managers who would request all these reports and then do nothing. And there was a huge creation problem for a company to create all this stuff that nothing ever happened to. And there were all kinds of projects. In today's world, I wonder if that problem still happens.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
Yeah, I work for the county, I can tell you
Yes.
that it does.
You're like,
I
we
don't-
need that analytics report. Did you read your last month? No. Well, do you really need it? Yeah, I was actually talking to a board of nonprofit. They do an association for interior design, and they wanted to have a directory of members, a printed directory of members. I was like, can't we just be an online directory of members? Well, no. It needs to be printed. I'm
we
like,
used to be able to get rid of whole computer systems by finding who wanted it and if they weren't doing anything with it.
yeah, and it's really curious because there's like 2.4 trillion pages on the internet, and there's like how many billion people, and or 2.4 trillion searches on the internet every day, and like 2.2 billion pages. And so I'm like, there's actually, if every single person that did a Google search read one page of the internet, unfortunately that's probably going to be the first page of the internet on their search, but theoretically we could actually read the entire content of everything we've still created, even though we're creating like 60 hours of YouTube video a second.
Which is frightening, isn't
There would
it?
still be enough people to watch it. So anyways, thanks so much for having a discussion with me, guys. I really appreciate it. It was good to see all of you again.
So unscheduled event
I've got a comment.
in 25 minutes
No, that's my man.
over there. It's just the final goodbye and prize drawing. So
Valerie was all involved.
Bye, goodbyes and prizes.
Then she likes to stay home. It snows in Preston. I'm never here.
Sorry, please.
I sent an email that may or may not get to you because my phone died in the middle of the process.
That's
Just
why I
kind
get
of
into it.
surreal, Pac-Man,
Here to hear that, or there'll be other prizes.
Kevin Coffee-esque kind of thing. Pac-Man is a analysis of human consumption.
She asked me a question.
Dan, you did very well at the TV. Or
Or
at the
You did
slides.
amazing at being like
And it's so nice to finally meet you in person.
Oh, wait,
You
no, I had
too.
that.
Nah, that can't possibly be. Yes. How many, I was gonna say, that's
If
like
nothing else, what is.
second podcast. Has it been that long since we've known each other?
I
Yeah.
mean, it used to be, you know,
Probably.
Probably.
back in like.
Yeah, I haven't been to
You
a lot
print
of these
something out, you bring
recently,
it over to a
so.
friend's house.
Or it was
Yeah.
as the 80s, you'd be walking down the hall with
But
coworkers.
now
So
we-
Bob, did you
we've
see, last
actually-
night's episode,
Yes, we
whatever?
have. It's good to
No?
meet you.
Like
Well,
that.
maybe they'll show it again sometime, Bob.
Ever.
Not that you need
That's
that out
like,
there
did you see
today.
last night's episode? No, but I got it on Smart, I'll watch it tonight.
Right, right. And that's another thing is like how, I mean, the way we're planning queuing our content consumption.
Well, and that we can be more selective too.
I love your shirt, by the way, and it went with the topic just perfect.
I fucking love pie charts. I'm
Yes.
addicted.
Oh, do you know about index.com?
No. Do I need another analytics providing software?
No. This is a lady who does cartoons that are all hand-drawn charts.
What's it called?
Indexed.